In a thought-provoking discussion on the future of the Democratic Party, Congressman Jake Auchincloss of Massachusetts articulates a vision for a party that recognizes the need for a meaningful alternative to the current political landscape dominated by former President Donald Trump. In an episode of the Ezra Klein Show, Auchincloss reflects on the post-election state of the party, emphasizing the importance of developing a coherent agenda that resonates with voters who feel abandoned by traditional Democratic policies. The country needs a resistance, he states, but it also needs an alternative. The backdrop of this dialogue is a Democratic Party grappling with its identity and relevance. After the recent election, many Democrats expressed uncertainty about what their first legislative priority would have been if they had secured a trifecta. This lack of direction is particularly concerning as the party finds itself in opposition, tasked not only with combating the agenda of Trump and his allies but also with redefining its own principles and policies in a way that attracts voters disillusioned by the status quo. Auchincloss introduces his Diet Coke theory of the Democratic Party, criticizing prominent Democrats for mimicking the populism of Trump without offering genuine alternatives. He argues that this approach is misguided as it alienates potential supporters who are not naturally inclined to vote Democratic. If you're walking to the polls and your number one issue is guns, immigration, or trans participation in sports, you're probably not going to be a Democratic voter, he argues. Instead, he believes the party should focus on issues that matter most to its traditional base, particularly economic concerns like the cost of living. The conversation shifts to the concept of a multiracial working-class coalition that Democrats once enjoyed but have since lost. Auchincloss attributes this breakdown to a perceived neglect of kitchen table issues, suggesting that Democrats became too entangled in cultural debates at the expense of addressing the economic realities facing many Americans. He points to the stark contrast between the Democratic focus on identity politics and the pressing needs of working-class voters, illustrating how this misalignment can lead to electoral losses. A critical aspect of Auchincloss's argument is the acknowledgement of cost disease in sectors such as healthcare and housing, which he describes as an economic phenomenon where service-intensive industries tend to inflate faster than the overall economy due to their low productivity. He advocates for a policy shift towards unlocking supply in these sectors rather than simply subsidizing demand. This perspective aligns with that abundance agenda, which calls for innovative solutions to address the root causes of economic strain rather than merely alleviating its symptoms. The dialogue also touches on the implications of the Democratic Party's current direction in relation to the technological landscape and the influence of big tech companies. Auchincloss expresses a nuanced position on technology, advocating for a pro-innovation stance in sectors like biotechnology while critiquing the negative impacts of social media on society. He emphasizes that Democrats must reclaim their narrative as a party that embraces technological progress without compromising on ethical standards and accountability. As the conversation unfolds, Auchincloss outlines the challenges ahead for Democrats, particularly in the face of an evolving Republican Party that is likely to present new candidates with refined messages. He warns that if Democrats do not articulate a clear, compelling vision, they risk losing ground to a Republican Party that has successfully harnessed populist sentiments. In 2028, Trump will not be the Republican nominee, he notes, indicating that Democrats must prepare for an unpredictable future. In conclusion, Auchincloss's insights underscore a critical moment for the Democratic Party. As it stands at a crossroads, the need for introspection and action is paramount. Democrats must find a way to reconnect with the electorate by articulating an agenda that not only opposes the current administration but also offers a viable path forward. The question remains, can the party redefine itself in a way that resonates with a diverse range of voters and addresses their pressing concerns, thereby securing its relevance in the years to come? The answer may well determine the party's fate in upcoming elections. As the nation prepares to spring forward into daylight saving time on March 9, a long-standing debate over the relevance and practicality of this biannual clock adjustment is intensifying. For many Americans, this ritual means losing an hour of sleep, but the implications of daylight saving time extend far beyond mere inconvenience. Lawmakers and citizens alike are grappling with whether this time change should continue or be abolished altogether. Daylight saving time, first introduced in the United States during World War I as a wartime measure, aims to maximize daylight during the longer days of summer. However, the rationale behind it has often been misinterpreted, with the prevalent myth suggesting it was designed to benefit farmers. In reality, farmers were among the earliest opponents of the time change, finding it disruptive to their schedules. According to historical accounts, farmers preferred the sun's natural cycle over the artificially adjusted clock, highlighting that daylight saving time has been a contentious issue since its inception. Despite its historical roots, the practice of changing clocks has faced increasing scrutiny in recent years. Frustration over the biannual shifts has prompted various legislative attempts to either make daylight saving time permanent or to eliminate it entirely. The U.S. Senate even passed the Sunshine Protection Act in 2022, which aimed to end the clock changes. However, the bill stalled in the House of Representatives and ultimately failed to gain traction under the administration of former President Joe Biden, who did not sign it. Former President Donald Trump has also expressed a desire to abolish daylight saving time, framing it as an inconvenience. In December, he stated on social media that daylight saving time was costly to the nation and indicated that the Republican Party would champion efforts to eliminate it. His comments reflect a growing sentiment among citizens who feel burdened by the clock changes, as many Americans have voiced their desire for a more consistent time system. As the debate continues, certain states have already opted out of daylight saving time, with Arizona and Hawaii leading the charge. Territories such as Puerto Rico and Guam also do not observe the time change, further illustrating a divide in how different regions approach this issue. The Department of Transportation oversees daylight saving time and maintains that the practice is beneficial for energy conservation and crime reduction. Yet, as public sentiment shifts, the future of daylight saving time remains uncertain. Will lawmakers finally heed the call for reform? Or will the clocks continue to shift twice a year, disrupting the lives of millions? As we approach the start of daylight saving time, the conversation will likely grow louder. With both state and federal lawmakers feeling pressure from constituents, the coming months could prove pivotal in determining whether this decades-old tradition remains in place or becomes a relic of the past. Whatever the outcome, it is clear that the debate surrounding daylight saving time is not just about clocks. It reflects broader questions about the structure of time and how it intersects with our daily lives. On February 5, 2025, the U.S. Senate Environment and Public Works Committee reached a significant milestone by unanimously passing the Brownfields Reauthorization Act of 2025. This pivotal piece of legislation aims to revitalize the federal government's efforts in addressing the challenges posed by brownfield sites, properties that may be complicated by the presence of hazardous substances, pollutants, or contaminants. Historically, brownfields have been a barrier to local redevelopment and economic growth, particularly affecting smaller and underserved communities. The Environmental Protection Agency (EPA) has long established programs to incentivize the cleanup and redevelopment of these properties, recognizing their potential to enhance local tax bases, create jobs, and alleviate pressure on undeveloped green spaces. However, access to these resources has often been limited for smaller entities, which struggle to compete against larger organizations with more resources. The newly passed legislation seeks to address these disparities by streamlining the application process for cleanup resources and reducing barriers for smaller communities. As articulated by the committee, the act is designed to make it easier for these communities to access the necessary funding and support. Key provisions include lowering the cost share requirement for project funding from 20% to 10% and offering waivers to further assist small and underserved communities. In a move that underscores the federal commitment to brownfield redevelopment, the act also proposes to double the maximum site cleanup grants from $500,000 to $1 million. Additionally, state program funding is set to increase to $75 million annually by 2030, which will enhance the capacity of local programs to address brownfield challenges effectively. The committee emphasized that these changes will enable smaller communities to compete more effectively for funding, thus enhancing their ability to tackle local environmental issues. The implications of this legislation extend beyond mere funding. It represents a significant shift in how the federal government prioritizes environmental justice and community development. By focusing on the needs of smaller communities, the Brownfields Reauthorization Act of 2025 not only aims to foster economic growth through redevelopment but also seeks to rectify historical inequities that have left many areas struggling to recover from industrial decline. The bipartisan support for the bill indicates a collective recognition of the importance of environmental sustainability and economic revitalization. As the legislation moves forward, it is expected to pave the way for enhanced cooperation between federal, state, and local governments as well as private stakeholders in the ongoing effort to transform brownfield sites into productive and safe spaces for communities. Looking ahead, the successful passage of the Brownfields Reauthorization Act of 2025 could signal a broader trend towards increased federal investment in local environmental initiatives. Communities across the nation may soon find themselves with new opportunities for growth anchored in the principles of sustainability and inclusivity. The act not only serves as a catalyst for local economic development but also reinforces the critical role that environmental stewardship plays in shaping the future of American cities and towns. In a landscape marked by increasing public distrust in government and a growing sentiment that American democracy is faltering, 2 U.S. Congress members are championing significant electoral reforms. Representatives Marie Gluesenkamp Perez, Democrat Washington, and Jared Golden, Democrat Maine, have introduced legislation to establish a bipartisan select committee tasked with exploring alternative electoral methods beyond the current winner-take-all system. This initiative, supported by over 170 political scientists, aims to foster a more robust democratic framework through public hearings and actionable recommendations. The urgency for reform is underscored by a troubling trend. A substantial number of Americans express skepticism regarding the efficacy and integrity of their government. Political scientists have echoed this concern, noting that our democratic institutions are experiencing a regression. A recent report suggests that a comprehensive approach to election reform is perceived as a vital step toward restoring faith in democratic processes. Gluesenkamp, Perez, and Golden have articulated their vision in a recent op-ed where they outline potential reforms including multi-member districts with proportional representation, ranked choice voting, and enlarged House and independent redistricting commissions. Among the notable proposals is the expansion of the House of Representatives, which has remained stagnant at 435 seats since the Reapportionment Act of 1929. A 2021 report revealed that while the representative-to-constituent ratio in 1790 was approximately 1 to 35,000, by 2021 it had ballooned to nearly 1:777,000. This disparity is stark when compared to other democracies. For instance, the UK's House of Commons has a ratio of 1 to 1:1,000 and Germany's legislature stands at 1 to 1:1,6,000. Research advocates for an increase in the number of representatives, with suggestions ranging from adding 150 seats to establishing a dynamic expansion based on population growth. The American Academy of Arts and Sciences proposes that expanding the House to 593 members could significantly enhance the relationship between representatives and their constituents. Smaller districts not only facilitate better communication but also empower voters, particularly minority groups, by increasing the likelihood that their preferences are represented in Congress. Studies indicate that constituents in smaller districts are more likely to engage with their representatives, fostering a sense of accountability. The second major reform under consideration is the adoption of multi-member districts with proportional representation. Currently, the U.S. electoral system often leads to a binary political landscape, restricting voter options and perpetuating a cycle of discontent. Gallup data shows that public approval of Congress has been dismally low, hovering around 17% as of late last year, with bipartisan disapproval of both major political parties. Proportional representation could mitigate this by allowing multiple representatives to be elected from a single district, reflecting a broader spectrum of political views in the legislature. Proportional representation ensures that even smaller parties can gain visibility and representation, countering the prevalent fear of wasting votes on less dominant candidates. In contrast, single-member districts often produce safe seats where incumbents face little to no competition, diminishing legislative productivity and voter engagement. The 2024 elections saw only 10% of House races classified as competitive, a stark indication of the need for a more dynamic electoral framework. Moreover, the current system is susceptible to extreme partisan gerrymandering, which distorts electoral outcomes and further disenfranchises minority groups. By transitioning to a system of multi-member districts with proportional representation, the influence of gerrymandering could be substantially reduced, fostering a more equitable electoral environment. Research suggests that even the most gerrymandered districts could yield fairer outcomes if combined into larger proportional districts. Political scientist Larry Diamond has cautioned against the pitfalls of winner-take-all systems in diverse societies, asserting that they often exacerbate divisions. In a nation characterized by deep-rooted ethnic, regional, and ideological differences, adopting electoral reforms that promote inclusivity is crucial. Multi-member districts can give historically marginalized groups a greater voice, enabling them to elect representatives who truly reflect their interests. As the discourse surrounding electoral reform gains momentum, the call to action from Representatives Gluesenkamp, Perez, and Golden is timely and necessary. Their advocacy for a select committee to explore these changes represents a significant step toward revitalizing American democracy. With over 500 political scientists backing the repeal of single-member district laws, there is a growing consensus that the future of democratic elections hinges on bold reform. As this legislative effort unfolds, it will be pivotal to monitor how these discussions evolve and whether they can translate into tangible changes that enhance democratic representation in the United States. In a significant legal move that could redefine the balance of power within the U.S. government, the Trump administration has petitioned the Supreme Court to allow the removal of Hampton Dellinger, the head of the Office of Special Counsel (OSC), an agency dedicated to protecting whistleblowers. This case marks a pivotal moment in the administration's broader strategy to reshape federal agencies and could set critical precedents regarding executive authority. The emergency appeal filed by the Justice Department seeks to overturn a lower court ruling that temporarily reinstated Dellinger after he was dismissed from his role. Dellinger, who was appointed by President Joe Biden and confirmed by the Senate in 2024, has argued that his removal was illegal as it lacked proper justification, violating the statute that allows for dismissal only in cases of inefficiency, neglect, or malfeasance. His defense underscores the importance of the OSC's mission, particularly in light of what he describes as an unprecedented wave of firings within the federal workforce by the Trump administration. The legal proceedings gained momentum after a divided panel of the appeals court declined to lift a temporary restraining order that reinstated Dellinger until the court could fully review the case. The OSC, established in 1979, serves as a critical safeguard for federal employees who report misconduct, enabling them to disclose wrongdoing without fear of retaliation. Dellinger emphasized the relevance of the agency's work in today's climate, stating, "The Office of Special Counsel is needed now more than ever." The administration's petition frames the court's intervention as an unconstitutional encroachment on executive powers, echoing recent Supreme Court decisions that have affirmed the president's authority to manage executive branch personnel without judicial interference. The administration cited cases such as Sila Law LLC v. CFPB and Collins v. Yellen, which reinforce the idea that the president has broad powers to remove agency heads, arguing that the current situation presents an unprecedented assault on the separation of powers. As this legal battle unfolds, it raises pressing questions about the limits of executive power and the role of independent agencies. The Supreme Court's decision to hear the case expected after the President's Day holiday could have far-reaching implications. If the court sides with the Trump administration, it would not only embolden the executive branch but could also undermine protections for whistleblowers and diminish the OSC's authority. In parallel with this unfolding drama, the administration is navigating a broader landscape of legal challenges. In recent weeks, various federal court rulings have scrutinized Trump's aggressive restructuring efforts, including a notable case involving a Massachusetts student who was appealing to the Supreme Court over his right to wear a T-shirt stating, "There are only two genders." This case, alongside Dellinger's situation, reflects the tensions inherent in the current political climate, particularly surrounding issues of free speech and government accountability. As the Trump administration pushes forward with its agenda, the outcomes of these cases will be instrumental in shaping the future of federal governance and civil service protections. Legal experts and political analysts alike are watching closely as the implications of the Supreme Court's decisions could resonate across various facets of American life, from civil rights to the fundamental principles of governance. The coming weeks will be pivotal for the trajectory of executive power and the rights of federal employees as the administration's legal challenges continue to unfold.